Hello everyone. Today we're going to be going over the Talmud of Emmanuel, its discovery, its translation, and the first chapter. In 1963, a Swiss-born man named Edward Albert Meyer, who the world now knows as Billy Meyer, and his ex-Greek Orthodox priest friend, Issa Rashid, took an afternoon walk along a roadway a little to the south of the old city of Jerusalem, and during that afternoon walk, Albert Meyer happened to glance upwards and spied a small opening in the ground that took his interest. Finding himself curious, Albert Meyer took a torchlight from his backpack and examined the opening, which was found to continue inwards. And so, Albert and his friend Issa Rashid dug out enough of the surrounding earth to allow them to gain entrance to some sort of chamber. What they both found after crawling inside was an old tomb in a state of disrepair and half filled with earth. However, after clearing more of the soil away, Albert Meyer and Issa Rashid discovered a package beneath the flat rock, which he took back to Issa Rashid's home to examine. The package was said to be about 60 centimeters long and 25 centimeters wide. It was found to hold 4 separate rolls of Aramaic writings, which took the name of the Talmud of Jmmanuel. Luckily, Issa Rashid has some Palestinian background in his family, and so he found he could read the old Aramaic text. And the first thing that Issa Rashid noted was that the title page shown that Judas Iscariot had authorized this collection of spiritual knowledges on behalf of his teacher and guide, who was named Emmanuel. Issa Rashid also noted extraterrestrial links within the Talmud, and it was made clear that the real father of the biblical Adam was named Simyasa, who was a distant traveler from the far reaches of mankind's universe, and an aide to El, or God. It became very clear to both Issa Rashid and Albert Meyer that this collection of ancient rolls, much like the Book of Enoch and other so-called apocryphal writings, was going to be considered heretical because of its content, which strongly contradicted the popular biblical teachings of the latter-day established churches. Not only were the extraterrestrial links presented in the Talmud, but it was also made clear that Judas Iscariot was actually the friend, student, and official scribe, recorder of the Master Emmanuel. The scrolls also stated that Judas Iscariot never spied his friend and teacher Emmanuel in the run-up to the biblical crucifixion event, as the real culprit of that venomous act was a man named Judah Iscariot, who was the son of Simon the Pharisee. Now we're going to go to the translation. Because of the nature of the revelations made clear in the teachings of the Talmud, Issa Rashid offered to translate the document in secret, in the hope that the finished version could be made available to the world. Also interestingly, prophetically, Albert Meyer had already been told 7 years before co-discovering the Talmud of Emmanuel that he was destined to become the man that would make it available to the world. Anyway, Issa Rashid spent a few months checking the highlights of the Talmud and imparting them to his friend Albert Meyer. And then Issa Rashid began a formal translation in August 1963 into German, Albert Meyer's native language, whilst Albert Meyer continued onwards to Meherali, India, to train under a Hindu guru and to further his own spiritual knowledges. And after a year in India, Albert Meyer continued onwards and journeyed to Turkey, where he met a Greek lady named Calliope Zafiru in 1965, and who became his traveling companion in Asia, and later his wife and mother of Albert's 3 children, when they came to the town of Emmanuel in Switzerland to make a home together. Meanwhile, Issa Rashid worked on the German translation of the Talmud of Emmanuel, which he completed up to the 36th chapter, which he posted in 1970 in 2 separate packages to an address in Switzerland that had been the home of Albert Meyer's parents. Amazingly, although Albert Meyer's parents were no longer living at that particular house, in 1974 the postal office at Nuthel forwarded the 2 packets unto him, and in the same roundabout manner, Albert Meyer also received a personal letter from Issa Rashid that spoke about the translation becoming known to certain authorities, which resulted in him fleeing away from Jerusalem to a refugee camp in Lebanon, along with his family. However, East Rashid's presence also became known to the Israeli authorities, and the refugee camp was bombed during an Israeli air raid. And this air raid forced East Rashid to flee again to Baghdad without the scrolls, where he had posted his final letter to Albert Meyer. Sadly, in 1976, Albert Meyer learned that East Rashid and his entire family were assassinated in Baghdad, shortly after posting that last letter, by Israelis and Christians. Now, who really wrote the Talmud of Emmanuel? Well, most of the body of the Talmud was penned by Emmanuel's official scribe, Judas Iscariot, during the life and times leading up to and following the crucifixion event. Though to trace the point when the Talmud was originally finalized, we need to examine what some people believe to be more controversial aspects of the Master Emmanuel's life, which takes our investigation to the tomb of Joseph of Arimathea, and then onwards into India. And here comes some of the more of the so-called Apocrypha, in that the Talmud of Emmanuel makes it very clear that Master Emmanuel, aka Jesus, never died on the cross. He only ever fell into a trance-like condition due to the Archangel Gabriel twinning with Emmanuel's body to induce a death-like stupor. And inside the tomb of Joseph of Arimathea, Emmanuel was revived by a team of Hindu healers before he set off to India to continue with his teachings. In fact, it is believed by many scholars that the full story was only ever completed in India in the early 2nd century. Also, there's a great deal of evidence stating that after Emmanuel's genuine death, in the Kashmir region in the early 2nd century, at 119 years old, that the scrolls were carried back to the Palestinian or Anatolian region by Emmanuel's oldest son, Joseph. And Joseph evidently released a second copy of the teachings somewhere in that region, since that copy found its way into the hands of the apostle Matthew. However, Joseph also preserved and hid the original rolls within the tomb of Joseph of Arimathea, just south of the old city of Jerusalem. And there they lay until Albert Meyer and Isa Rashid rediscovered them in 1963. Let's also be aware that it is made clear in the Talmud that the teachings were originally written down by Judas Iscariot, who traveled with Emmanuel to India after the crucifixion, along with Judas Thomas, Emmanuel's brother, and Mother Mary. And so, to answer my original question, which was centered around who wrote the Talmud, what we find is that it was mostly written by Judas, who was present at all Emmanuel's lectures, both before the crucifixion event and after Emmanuel traveled and taught in India. Though it also seems very clear to me that Emmanuel's oldest son, Joseph, added the final touches to the pages, and also made it at least one other copy, which became known as the Book of Matthew. Now we'll be going over chapter 1 of the Book of Talmud of Emmanuel. This is the Book of Arcanum of Emmanuel, which is called the One with Godly Knowledge, or God with Us, who is the son of Joseph, grandson of Jacob, a distant descendant of David. David was a descendant of Abraham, whose genealogy traces back to Adam, the father of the lineage of terrestrial humans. Adam was begotten by Simyasa, the leader of the celestial sons, who are the guardian angels of God, the great ruler of the travelers from afar. Simyasa is also quoted in Enoch chapter 7, verse 9, and it's spelled Samyaza instead of Semjsa. Now, the celestial son and guardian angel of God, the great ruler of the voyagers, who traveled here through the vast expanses of the universe, took a terrestrial woman, aka an earth woman, and begot Adam, the father of the white human population. Now, instead of going through the whole lineages, it's about 80 of them. It's the full lineage of Christ, or Emmanuel. And before we get too far into this, into chapter 1, let's go over something real quick. Now, the Creator in this represents the Father of all, including God, whose image we are made in, aka our flesh. And our spirit comes directly from the Creator, or Father. But the Father made God, who made us. So we all come from this one source, both physically and spiritually. Now we're going to start on 81 Joseph was the husband of Mary, the mother of Emmanuel, who was impregnated by a distant descendant of the celestial sons, Raziel, who was the guardian angel of the secret. When Joseph heard of Mary's secret impregnation by a descendant of the celestial sons from the lineage of Raziel, behold, he was filled with wrath and thought of leaving Mary, before he would be married to her before the people. While Joseph was thinking in this manner, behold, a guardian angel sent by Gabriel, the celestial son, who had impregnated Mary, appeared and said, Joseph, Mary is betrothed to you, and you are to become her spouse. Do not leave her, because the fruit of her womb is chosen for a great purpose. Marry her in all openness, so that you may be husband and wife before the people. Behold, the impregnation of Mary occurred 11,000 years after the procreation of Adam, through the celestial son, Simyasa, to fulfill the word of God, the ruler of those who travel from afar, who conveyed these words through the prophet Isaiah. Okay, this is a note. We are made in this God's image, and the creation does not have an image, but made God, aka the King of Wisdom, in heaven. This is also the same name Emmanuel gets on the earth, is King of Wisdom, or King of Peace. 86. Behold, a virgin will be impregnated by a celestial son, before she is married to a man before the people. They will name the fruit of her womb Emmanuel, which translated means the one with godly knowledge, or God with us, as a symbol and honor to God. Through God's power and providential care, the earth was made to bear intelligent human life, when the celestial sons, the travelers from the far reaches of the universe, mated with the women of the earth. Now, we're also going to go to, real quick, it's Matthew chapter 1, verse 21 and verse 23. In verse 21, you'll see that Mary, in our book of Matthew, she named him Jesus. But they quote the scripture from Isaiah chapter 7, verse 14, on verse 23, which says his name will be called Emmanuel. And yet they called him, as you see in the text, Jesus. Now we're on 88. Behold, God and his fellow followers came far from the depths of space, where they delivered themselves from a strong bondage, and created here a new human race, in home with the early women of this earth. God deserves the honor of the people of earth, for behold, he is the true originator of the white and of the colored earth humans, and to him honor should be given. Except for him, there is nothing equal in form for these human lineages, created by him. Remember, created in this God's image, so he's also human, just more advanced than us in spirit. Besides him, therefore, people should have no other gods, who created other human lineage in any other parts of the earth. Except for God, there is nothing of comparable form, worthy of veneration. Over him and his celestial sons reigns only the omnipotence of all creation itself, or aka the Creator or Father, which made God, is the only thing above him, which should be revered. Behold, therefore, over the earth reigns God, the master of the celestial sons, and the people of the white and colored terrestrial lineages. God is the lawgiver for these human populations, and therefore his wishes should be fulfilled by man and woman. God the Lord is generous in his love, but also terrible in his wrath, when his laws are disobeyed. Mary's impregnation is God's law, and you, Joseph, are to be her husband in matrimony. Now the birth of Emmanuel. When Joseph heard this, however, he was mindful of his devoutness to God's laws. So he brought Mary home and married her before the people. At this time a decree went out from Emperor Augustus that all the world should be counted. This census was first of its kind, and occurred at the time that Cyrenius was governor in Syria. All went to be assessed, each to his own town. Joseph of Galilee, of the town of Nazareth, also went with his wife Mary into the Judaic land to the city of David, which is called Bethlehem, because he was of the house and lineage of David, in order to be assessed with his wife Mary, who was pregnant by the celestial son Gabriel, from the lineage of Raziel. When they were there, the time came for her to give birth. Since they could find no shelter, they spent the night in the stable. And Mary bore her first son on the straw, wrapped him in cloth, and laid him in a manger near the animals, because there was no other room for her in the inn. This is the end of chapter 1, and now we'll be going into chapter 2. When Emmanuel was born in the stable at Bethlehem, in the shelter in the land of the Jews during the time of Herod Antipas, tetrarch of Galilee, and Perea, behold, wise men arrived in Jerusalem from the Orient, and asked, Where is the newborn King of wisdom of the Jews? We have seen a bright light in the sky, and heard a voice saying, Follow the tail of the light, because of the King of wisdom of the Jews is born, who will bring great knowledge. Therefore we have come to worship the newborn King of wisdom. He shall possess the knowledge of God, and be a son of the celestial son Gabriel. His knowledge will be boundless, as will be his power to control human consciousness, so that humans may learn and serve creation. When Herod Antipas heard of this, he was frightened, and with him everyone in Jerusalem, because they feared that the newborn child would wield dreadful power. Herod Antipas called together all the chief priests and scribes from among the people, and inquired of them where Emmanuel had been born. And they replied, In Bethlehem, in the Jewish land, for thus it was written by the prophet Micah. And you, Bethlehem, in the land of the Jews, are by no means the least among the cities in Judah. For from you shall come forth the King of wisdom, who will bring great knowledge to the people of Israel, so that they may learn to serve creation. Thereupon Herod Antipas called the wise men secretly, and diligently asked them, when the bright light with the long tail had appeared in the sky. He later directed them to Bethlehem, and said, Go and search diligently for the young child, and when you find him, let me know, so that I may also come and adore him. And this is a note, this also has similarities to the book of Jasher. That's spelled Jasher, chapter 8, if you wanted to look more into it. After they had, now this is back into the chapter 2 of Emmanuel. After they had listened to Herod Antipas, they departed, and behold, the light with the long tail, which they had observed in the Orient, moved ahead of them with a high singing sound until it reached Bethlehem, and stood directly over the stable where the infant was born. When they saw this, they were filled with great joy. And they went into the stable and found the young child with his mother Mary, and with Joseph. And they fell down and worshipped the infant, and offered their treasures, which were gold, frankincense, and myrrh. However, the voice again rang out from the light high above, saying that they should not return to Herod Antipas, because he planned evil for the young child. And they returned to their homeland by another route. After the 3 wise men had left, behold, the celestial son Gabriel appeared to Joseph, saying, Arise and take the infant and his mother Mary with you, and flee to Egypt. Stay there until I beckon you, because Herod Antipas is planning to seek out the young child and kill him, since he fears that his babe might wield terrible power. While you are in Egypt, I will send my messenger to Herod Antipas to teach him the truth. And Joseph arose and took the young child and his mother by night, and escaped under the guidance of the celestial son Gabriel, in the descending light, which fled with him to Egypt. Here they remained until Herod Antipas had a change of mind, and his inner fear abated. When Herod Antipas realized that he had nothing to fear from the young boy, who was credited only with great wisdom and knowledge, he felt safe in his realm. Thus he promised the messenger of the celestial son Gabriel he would no longer pursue Mary, Joseph, and Emmanuel. Now that Herod Antipas and his followers had changed their attitude, behold, the celestial son Gabriel appeared again before Joseph in Egypt, and said, Arise, and take the young child and his mother Mary, and move to the land of Israel. And all those who sought the child's life have had a change of heart. And Joseph stood up, took the child and his mother, and returned to the light, which once more had appeared. It brought them to Israel. The celestial son Gabriel brought them back to the land of Galilee. There they dwelled in the city called Nazareth, so that which had been spoken by the prophets will be fulfilled. Emmanuel shall be called the Nazarene. That's the end of chapter 2. And we'll be picking up with chapter 3, and sorry for any interference on this.